Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Boy Mom Podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Carowin. I am absolutely delighted today to have a world recognized, if you're in the industry, if you're in the insurance and financial services industry, you'll certainly recognize him. If you're not, you might be a new face to you, but I'm happy to allow everyone to get to know Joe Jordan. Joe Jordan is a long-term, like I said, he's an icon in the insurance and financial services sector. And then he is also now an author and a global speaker on many an issue. And so we're delighted to have Joe. And Joe, welcome to the program.
Well, it's great to be here, Suzanne, and I'm really enjoying your some of the new projects that you're beginning to work on, and uh, we've worked well together in the past, so let's work well going forward.
Perfect. When God's grace, Joe, God's grace, right? So God just keeps putting new things in front of me, and I am just loving it. It's amazing how the more you lean in, the more things go well, right? The better luck you have. so
Yes.
so so again, Joe and I met in the financial services industry, and we've done a good amount of work together. We've had a couple speaking gigs together. It's been delightful. But one of the things I want to kind of pull out, and he talks about it in his book, and we'll post it in the blog, Living a Life of Significance. But I want to start, Joe, with you in and I also was able to write a big article on Joe and get to really know his background. But in particular, I want to dial it way back, Joe, and I want to talk about you and your mom, right? So if you would, can you take me back to your childhood? Tell me where you grew up. Tell me the whole story, because I think that our moms out there would love to know the kind of from whence you come.
Well, yeah, I was the youngest of four. My father was an advisor to Harry Truman, so he was a dude, you know. Um, we had three residences, one in the Bronx in New York. By the way, in the 40s and 50s, the Bronx was a great place to live, and
Mhm.
then a summer home and a place in Washington for my father. And so things were looking pretty good for my dad, and so this is the story that kind of made me, but it didn't happen overnight. And so what happened was 6 months after I was born, my father was killed in a car accident, and he had a $100,000 life insurance policy in 1952, and he had canceled it to buy an apartment building in the Bronx. So my mother woke up with four kids, and she had to take care of all of us. So the whole thing collapsed on us, and so that's how I grew up. Uh, but I was never really terribly affected by it because I was 6 months old when my father died. So kind of the progression I go through is I played football. I was a all East offensive lineman at Fordham University, and then I'm in their athletic Hall of Fame for football. And I was a Catholic big brother because I grew up without a dad, and one of the guys on the board was a linebacker for the New York Giants, which was my second religion. So he said, "Get in this business." So me getting into the insurance side of the business had nothing to do with what my story was. It's you do what a New York Giant did. So I kind of thought that I was being being driven there. I think God put me into some of these environments, and so being in the insurance business, going fast forward, I wound up at Payne Weber. I ran insurance sales there. I've been in the business for 50 years. I ran insurance sales there. This is around the time everybody used to stay in their lanes. And then around the 80s, that's when everyone started to do everybody else's stuff. And the idea was to diversify. It was all business, diversify revenue stream. Didn't have too much to do with taking care of clients. And so that's what I did at Payne Weber, a stock brokerage firm. For the youngins out there, okay, it was a smaller Merrill Lynch. It was a wirehouse on Wall Street like E.F. Hutton and all these other things. So they started doing that. And then I went to MetLife, and having the experience of having been a life agent, I fit in a lot better at MetLife, who were mostly life insurance salesmen. I understood the different cultures. So I had to get stockbrokers to do insurance. I had to get insurance people to do investments. And so that's how it went. And so I'll just go through the whole thing. I did it. I was very much a capitalist. How much money I make. I had a very senior position at MetLife, and I was finally taught I was going to be the opening speaker at a thing called $1 Million Roundtable. It's a huge global organization of top insurance people, the top 3% on the one, on the one. And so having to do that, what I began to understand was, one of the things I tell you, well, yeah, I told you that my father canceled the policy. I began to get angry because you know what $100,000 was in 1952? I mean,
Yeah.
that was gas money, and our lives would have been radically different. And I didn't know anything about affluence. Hell, I was 22. I didn't know that, the Bronx was the outer borough. Because I live in New York. That's an OB. It ain't a compliment, And I didn't know about Westchester County, this other stuff. I didn't know. So, but that's where I began to think about God put me in this position to be in this business, and I never recognized the impact because if my mother got $100,000 in 1952, you could buy a kick-ass house for $8,000.
Yeah.
You
Right.
could probably sell it for $250,000 in the '80s when the interest rates went up. Our lives would have been radically different. So for the first time, I made a human connection with what business was all about and the impact it was. And then I was saying, where's this guy from this insurance company who didn't get on my father's butt to tell him, you really can't cancel that. So that was my introduction to go from the dark side, okay, if you would.
Yeah.
So that's why I wrote Living a Significant Life, because I like to talk more about I was as good a product hawker as there is out there, but I changed my tone more towards the idea of telling financial services people it's really the impact, the positive impact that you can have on others, to make certain that they could have a worry-free retirement, that they could create for somebody a retirement income they can't outlive, and a lifestyle-sustaining income, and more importantly, in case if something happens, to make certain the family's taken care of. So that was my spiritual catharsis in 1954 when I had to make that speech. And in fact, I'm speaking at this thing, $1 Million Roundtable, 21 years after I did the opening talk. So that's
Had the epiphany. You had the epiphany. So
yeah.
you can kind of reflect on that. That's great. So one of the things, Joe, so I mean, let's talk about this for a second. So your mom wakes up, no husband, right? Her life is just, I'm sure her heart was shattered, and then she's got these 4 kids. So what did she have to do now in order for you guys to be able to be successful?
Well, she had to go out and get a job, and she never had to do that, right? She was a high school graduate. She had no skill sets or anything like that, had no aspirations for it. She finally got a job as a secretary in the bartenders local in the Bronx. And, you can imagine a wardrobe from where she came from. And so it's
Right.
all little things like, who does this one think she is? You know what I mean? And so
Right. Oh, yeah.
all those
Yeah.
little, no support from the extended family, some of them had yachts. They said, why don't you drive up and go on the boat? We didn't have a car. It's inconceivable for them to begin to think that that's a possibility. So it's all those little nicks and stabs. And she did a great job, but it took years off her life. And so it didn't happen until I was in my 50s to have this realization, this catharsis. And so that's why I'm talking about this idea of living a significant life, of the
Right.
impact that we can have on people, which is dramatically different than I think any other profession. And so that's what I talk to.
So probably I would venture to guess that because she was a phenomenal mother, you didn't think about it until your 50s because she probably took care of everything, right? And you weren't she kind of took one for the team, and you were able to grow up and do all those things, etc., right? She made tremendous sacrifices for you and the family.
Well, some of the decisions she had to make, I'm the baby, so I had 2 older sisters. She decided that the girls couldn't go to college because she had to work to make sure the boys went to college. How do you like that? And one of them had a full scholarship. So it's
Oh,
really
oh,
the idea.
ouch.
I mean, that's the point. It's really the idea of the consequences of some of the decisions that we make. And
Yeah.
so I was trying to get at, promote the aspect of why not backstroke in this uh, industry in terms of doing something really significant and worthwhile. Because I did the research, I found out everyone dies, So what happens, what happens between your life and I'm just going to throw out. So what I talk a lot about is stories, and and I had an example. I met a friend who was from Beirut, and I asked. I don't. A lot of people don't know this. In 2020, there was a massive explosion in Beirut. It took out part of the city. Some people died. It was a Russian
Big port at the
fertilizer.
dock, that one, right?
Fertilizer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
And so I said, "Were you affected by that?" He said, "No, but one of my clients jumped in front of his wife, and a shard of glass came in and took out his neck. And he was dying.
Oh,
So he's out, and he knows it. He knows in about 30, 40 seconds he's gone. His last words to his wife is, 'Talk to Fred. He'll take care of you.'" So,
oh,
we give Brees and
right.
Rattler the run for their money. So that's kind of the thing that I'm trying to get back towards. Is if it gets the money, I'm trying to throw the money changers out of the temple. And one of the things I would tell you, not everyone has appeal towards it because, yeah, I've heard this before or what have you. But some of the people I've influenced from an inspirational point of view has really changed their lives.
Oh, 100%. So, and I know you and I have talked about this, but I don't think our listeners know this or our viewers know this, that I have a very similar story to Joe in that my mother died of cancer and was a case study at Georgetown University and wiped through all of our family finances. And my father never had a life insurance policy on her because she was a stay-at-home mom or like part-time artist, and he didn't think that was necessary, right? But in doing so, that whole thing happened and how life changing it would be. So, Joe, I want to go back to okay, so that was back, I think you said in the 50s that this happened, right? And
Right.
so, okay, so how has it changed now for women in 2025 and women getting the right insurance or financial advice or being financial literate? Are we completely there yet? What's happened?
No, we're not there, and I'm a big advocate. Obviously, I grew up in a female-dominated environment, so I was more sensitive to women's issues than most men. Okay, um, but I mean, here's the thing going forward. I mean, right now longevity has gone through the roof, and 80% of men die married. Excuse me, 80% of women die single. So life
Can you say
insurance.
that again? Say that again.
80% of men die married. 80% of women die single. So life insurance is a woman's issue. And the other
Yeah.
thing in the United States, okay, for every guy that's over 100, there's 5.5 women. So longevity is a woman's issue. So I have always been a staunch advocate to get more women into the business because they're the main beneficiaries in terms of some of the stuff. I like to talk about the bigger issue, not the new product that came out and the new index and
Yeah. No.
that and the other thing. The fact of the matter is now I think the biggest problem the planet faces now is the aging population of the world. I don't think it's global warming is an issue, but who knows? This is math, okay? And the fact of the matter is we're not reproducing replacements for us. So for the first, Japan in 2008 bought more adult diapers than baby diapers. So what do you think the prognosis of that one is? And it's continuing. And we're all globally going to begin to look like that. I mean, I know there's some stats, but I think it's worthwhile to get it across. In 2017, the United Nations said that 11 billion would be the top number of people on the planet, and that would be hit by 2100. It's now 9 billion, and it's by 2060. So it's falling like a rock. You have China with a one-child policy. Guess what happened? Okay, what do you think? They have 30 million bachelors, and why is that? Because with a one-child policy, what happened to the girls? So they don't have enough childbearing females in the society. This is irreversible. This isn't going to happen and just change. Their whole idea, it's the not thinking about life. I mean, some of it was brought out that we shouldn't have too many people on the planet because it's screwing up the environment. It's exactly the opposite, okay? And this one happens to be irreversible, so I have to deal with it. And so think
Yeah.
about that. We are getting into a society where there will be a lot more older people for the first time in history. There will be a lot more older
Right.
people retired, taking money out, and the working age population will be shrinking. And these are the guys who pay the bills. So, guess what happens to all of the Social Security and all of the safety nets? They come into jeopardy. So, from my perspective, that's where I think the profession we're in is so important, because people are going to have to be responsible for their own longer and more expensive retirement. And it's just the idea of living a lot longer. So that's where I think that it's a great opportunity, and I'm trying to get that word out. And so that's the big driver right now. And I don't think if you don't know that, you can't
Mhm.
understand the importance of what you do. And it's just starting to happen now. I mean, the Wall Street Journal starting to have front page articles about it. You never saw that before. The only thing
No,
you ever heard
no.
about population growth was there was too many. The Malthusian theories all have been proven dramatically wrong. There was a book out that talked about the population bomb, and it made all these predictions in the 60s. All these predictions of what's going to
Yep.
happen in India and Britain's going to completely, totally wrong. The problem we have, and I know he's not too much in a lot of people's stay, but the guy who built all of the electric cars here in the country, what's his name?
Elon Musk.
Yeah, Elon
Yeah,
Musk,
Elon
right?
Musk.
He's the one who
Hmm.
says it too. He says it's exactly the opposite. We don't have enough people. Life is sacred, and we always find ways to push forward and to make life better. And so that's kind of the idea. So that shifts into the Christian Judeo world, right?
Right.
Those are
Yep.
some of the things we have. And there's research done that people have never felt more isolated and alone. Yale did a study and found out the more people use Facebook, the worse they feel. No one posted the dog died or the car blew up or you had a lousy day. It's all this idyllic crap that
True.
everyone knows is
True. Good
false,
point. Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so so that that's a problem. And I social media isn't bringing people together. It's actually isolating them. And then you had a pandemic, okay, and then you have this new phenomenon, FOMO, the fear of missing out, okay. And do you know the UK has the Ministry of Loneliness, okay. This isn't John Cleese
No.
Ministry of
No, they
City
do.
Walk, they have the Ministry of, so this is a big thing. So what I'm trying to bring in is the idea that a lot of these great advances have isolated the human situation, and that's the
Right.
thing that we have to begin to bring to bear.
Yeah, and I'll go back to a couple of things you said, which is I can just say from my own experience in going out to different companies and businesses and visiting different people, this idea of peak 65, of knowing how many people are actually turning 65 on a daily basis now for the next couple of years. Most average Americans don't know about this trend. They're not here, to your point, they're not hearing about a very important thing you said. There'll be more people in adult diapers than baby diapers, right? They're not hearing these things. And I will say, I trip over many a 30 something year old who absolutely will say that they don't want to have children, or like how they would never do it because of the climate. Like they're thinking they're doing
Yeah,
a good one for the climate. And I've had people of all ages absolutely accost me and say to me as a boy mother, I quote, "I hope to God you're telling your children they should not procreate." Right? And I've had women telling me this about my own sons, and I thought, "Hey, listen, if there's anybody that should procreate, it's my two sons," right? I think as most boy moms would say, if you know that you've got good sons, that's who we need procreating, right? And it's just this weird message that's coming through. Yet at the same token, I will tell you there's people now out on social media that are doing these things, they're having these um, podcasts and they're on TikTok and they're saying, "Hey, listen, we have a new phenomenon. It's called we should all sit down to dinner together, right? Or we should read aloud as a family." And so some of these throwback things are coming into the kind of mainstream. But where you're coming from too is we have not married it up yet with the finances. And at the end of the day, kind of the buck stops there with finances. That's one of the biggest pieces that drive a marriage apart, right? That is a huge stressor for children. People a lot of times will say they'll base their whether or not they have children on finances. And so we in the American population, we don't have that financial literacy, do we? And I certainly would say, I don't know, Joe, you tell me. I don't know that we blended it together successfully through kind of the mind, body, spirit, and kind of put finances into our overall Christian Judeo way, some better than others, but it's something that we could probably improve upon.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think it's really important that people begin to realize the real risks being posted onto humanity, and I think the idea that children are bad and we shouldn't have that many people was completely and totally false, and it's not going to change quickly, and so as I said before, it makes people responsible for their own longer and more expensive retirement. And so that's why I think our business is really going to be very valuable. And well, it's as you said. I mean, baby boomers now. There's 5 more years of 13,000 people a day turning 65. Then Gen X is next, and they're almost as big as baby boomers. And after that, there's the millennials, and they're even bigger. So, and every year that goes on, the less funded will be a lot of these government programs that people have had. The other part of it is the idea of living a life of significance in retirement, and a lot of that centers in on the idea of what are you going to do? What are you going to do to stay active? What are you going to do? And the things that best appeal to people is the idea of what they're doing to positively impact others. That's the Judeo-Christian part. That's the whole idea about purpose-driven retirement planning. And I see all these green shoots that are beginning to pop up. That book I talked about, Gary Sirac, How to
Yeah.
Retire, is just one of them. So that's all that's beginning to happen. The awareness of the fact that I believe the aging population of the world is the biggest issue. We've missed the boat on that one. We have to attempt to reverse it, and then it gets to the important part of that. Life should be led by your impact on others, and so there's the Christian Judeo issue.
So let me ask you this. In your household, after, I mean, I understand that you were only 6 months old, so you don't have any knowledge of this, but at what point in your household did it become, so I guess what I'm asking is, did your mother talk to the remaining, the siblings about finances?
No,
How did you learn any of this stuff? How did you learn?
we didn't know anything about it because she protected us from that, so she did.
Okay.
She could, and the '50s was different than the '80s in terms of how much money you could make and whether you could have an apartment and all of this other stuff. So we were far from destitute, but I played baseball, and that was a month or two thing to get my catcher's equipment. You know what I mean? So it was a family event to figure that out if I wanted to be in athletics or what have you. And of course, my mother, I was a football star, but we could win 27-0. She'd say, "Wonderful, dear." And if we lost 27-0, she'd say, "Wonderful, dear." We had no idea. So I didn't have any bail stuff with that, but I understood it, so anyway, that's the thing. The sorry part of me is it took me till I was 54 to put all of this together, and so that's
Yeah.
why I believe in.
So what would, I mean, what would your advice be to other men, right? Because did you end up turning around and taking care of your mother then until she died?
Oh, we took mom for the most part was able to stay in her apartment, but of course, as she got a little bit more feeble,
Sure.
and then ultimately she died. So I think that's there, and now that's exploding. The one thing that I missed with my mother, and I saw a video that pointed that out. It was done by the Archdiocese of Tampa, I believe, and it shows an older woman walking out, and she's thinking. And so there's a younger woman. It's kind of a cheap car, and she goes, "I know what's going on here. You don't want me to move in with you. After all, I'm his mother, not yours." And so and I'm sure the money's tight and all this other stuff. So the thing that I missed, because the thing I regret is that with my mother, I just said, "Mom, don't worry about it. It's okay." The fact that people begin to feel, and I think that worked on her leaving the earth when she did, was she felt like a third wheel. She felt she was a drain on her children. Because
Mm.
she couldn't keep up with that. So that's the thing I didn't, and that's exploding right now. And
Yes, I was going to say that. Yes.
she spent time in our apartment in Manhattan, when I had two kids. But I'm married to a saint, so she didn't mind it. But here's a social thing, there may not be a lot of other married couples that one partner is not enamored with the fact that they're spending time, energy, and resource on taking care of the other person's mom or dad. So these are things that's why the aging
That's a good
population
point.
of the world is having such a dramatic effect, and
Yeah.
no one's waking up to it. And so that's what has to come across.
Well, that's a really good point because I mean, I think so much of the emphasis now on mental health is the youth, and again, they're having a horrible time, right? We're talking 2 million suicides happening in the youth culture and in just in the U.S. in the last couple of years. But we're not talking about mental health. We don't talk about mental health. To your point, if the UK's already has a ministry of loneliness, we're not talking about all those effects. We don't talk about caregiving enough, right? This is still, and we still have. I have many people that say to me, I don't want to be a burden to my children, right? I never want them to know my finances, blah, 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 instead of being incorporated. But it's hugely stressful and then no one has a plan.
Right, right. So that's there, and there's also, are you familiar with blue zones? There are places on the planet where people live extraordinary long lives, and Okinawa in Japan is the king. Okay, and there's a I'm going to get this worded wrong, akagi or something like that. It's almost a religion.
Hmm.
And so what they go through is in terms of this is four fundamental things to figure out what you're going to do with your life at any stage of the game. So it goes in terms of what are you good at, what can you get paid for, what does the world need, and are you good at? And so those were things that it went that they bring people through. So it's almost kind of like a spiritual part.
Yeah.
I can't pronounce what the hell it is. Starts with I and it's K's and all sorts.
Okay. Yep. And it's
But
Japanese.
it's Japanese. It's Japanese, yeah. And Australia did a study too, and they found out that people who have a lot of children, it doesn't necessarily affect their longevity. So this was I'm just looking at it. It's an Australian longitudinal study. It was 2005. It says close relationships with children and other relatives had very little impact on how long people live. But people with the most friends tend to outlive those who have the fewest by 22%. So when I'm talking to people in the business, I say, so that means if you quit, you're going to die. And it was a joke. But but
Right.
but but it's the idea of the interaction with others, which is the thing that helps people live a lot longer. And we're beginning to rediscover that.
So what do you, so I mean, having said that, we are post COVID, hopefully staying post COVID. So, I mean, what's your take then on what senior kind of care or communities look like? Because, nobody wants to go to nursing homes anymore, et cetera. And then how do you age in place and how do you do that effectively, not be a third wheel? Are we at the advent of seeing a new model actually emerge, or do we need to purposely and get intentional about what that looks like?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at it in the United States, these numbers aren't exactly right, but they're in the right range, okay?
Okay.
But there's something like about 50 million people in the US provide free care for their parents worth hundreds of billions of dollars. So figure it out as the population begins to scroll down. The burdens become greater for government and they're not making the money to do it. So these things have to be actively sought after. I mean, the Japanese are now developing robots to take care of the older people because they don't have the population to do it. They don't allow immigration for that purpose. So that's why I think we really have
Mm.
to focus in on the idea of the aging population of the world. The hell with global warming. I mean, it's there and some way you have to adapt to it, but this is something we did to ourselves. And
Right.
and so that's the thing I'm trying to bring into financial services because we deal with that directly. The ability
Right.
to be able to set aside money for that. So that's what I highlight.
And yet, most of us, I think you would agree, we struggle with having candid conversations that we can just talk. I mean, money is this, it's an object, right? It's this thing, and yet is wrapped up in so much shame and emotion and fear and etc. Most families are not just like, "Hey, let's just put the cards on the table. Let's talk money. Let's talk about how let's get a plan for how we're going to talk, care for mom, etc." And again, most boys with the mom don't want to take care of their mother, right? As that gets real uncomfortable real quick. I think in our culture, so it's a there's a lot of stuff there to unpack and to reset a new way of talking about this and working through it. What advice do you give to advisors about it? So again, financial advisors are like your insurance guy or gal. They're probably sometimes they should be Joe's hypothesis or his premises. They should be having these conversations and getting these plans in place. But a lot of times they're uncomfortable too. So how do you talk to everybody about saying like, stop avoiding the situation? You got to get in there and kind of I'd say normalize the conversation. Like this is part of taking care of people. Like you wouldn't have a baby and not have any plan for how you're going to take care of the baby, right? Nobody has a problem talking about childcare, right? And who's going to take care of the baby? That's a normal thing in a family. Why is this such? Why is this so shrouded in discomfort?
Well, look, I think to some extent we've been affected by our prior demographic cohorts, the greatest generation and stuff, because the whole idea or concept was work towards. A lot of people used to have defined benefit plans, so it was a pension. And the myth of retirement is all you have to do is when you get to retirement, so work your ass off now because it's going to be blissful. Well, it's not blissful when people are, don't feel wanted or valuable or anything like that. And so what's different now is if you have a couple age 65 that doesn't smoke, there's a 50% chance one of them's going to be alive at age 92. That's 30 years out. And by the way, married people live longer. Why? Absolutely no idea why, but they do. Well, again, it's
You
that.
have enough, I don't know, fire in your belly for still nipping at each other, right? It keeps you going.
Yeah, well, they either take care, but these are things that are facts, and so that's something that's why people who say I'm not going to go. Well, people can make any decision that they want, but sometimes it's holier than now in terms of making it. I'm doing this for the environment, and all this
Yeah.
other stuff like that. Having children is not bad, okay? And when you don't value life, I think that's the fundamental issue that put us into this dilemma. And so now we have to deal with it. And thank God for all of the medical advances and stuff like that. We're just living a lot longer. So it takes a while for that to get absorbed and for people to realize it because they're looking to their parents. Look, I'm 72, so I look towards my parents. I mean, I had a difficult time. My mother grew up in the Depression. So you want to talk to her about the stock market? Forget about it. I mean, she put it in
Mm.
my genes, you know.
Mhm.
So,
Right, right.
so,
Under the
so
mattress club.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right. So that's where you have to go through some of the changes. But I think that's a fact where we're not producing enough children to replace us. We have to do some things about it, and we just have to wake up to that. And human beings are okay. Okay, they're not just some people who bust up the environment, and it's going to take us a long time to change.
So let me ask you this. So two questions real quick. How long you been married?
Um, well, it will be in 2030. It'll be 50 years.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're counting down from the big one for
Well,
the big
it's a neat
goal.
thing about being married in 1980. We just
Yeah.
and
Right.
on an even number. So it's been a long time. Look, that's the foundational aspect of society. Not that it always works in different things, and people should have the freedom to get out. But sometimes the foundations of what our
Yeah.
society is built on comes under attack a lot of times. And I think some of those people are whacked.
I
And
think it's why it's important to hear that. So was your mom still alive when you got married?
yeah, she was. So she saw that. She saw that, and it was there. And then But it was a hard life, a lot of tension and it was economically tough, but it wasn't, destitution if you had to be that. And I
Mhm.
think the world was a little safer place back then than it would be now. But that's the other part, societal. I mean, you have so many single moms, taking care of children, and that really has an adverse effect on young males. The statistics are, I don't know them specifically, but it's just outrageous when you see that. So the idea of people coming together and having a natural thing, and so I think we have to get back to the fundamentals and to the basics, and I think different venues need to discuss these because what I'm looking at is people are beginning to react against all of those things that are anti-societal or anti, getting together.
Even more destabilizing to it. And it's actually one of the reasons I got involved with FCA recently. Actually, yesterday I was at an FCA meeting and I heard a statistic that one of the top SEC football teams, they came out in their own report, self disclosing that 72% of their football players came from a single mom household.
Wow, yeah. Well, I'm not surprised by that,
Right.
and
But when you put it like those terms, you go, wow. And they were talking about the struggles they have with these men, right? And what they now need to do as a program in order to successfully support them.
well, that's the beauty of athletics because it really teaches you the fundamentals of life. You know what I mean? There isn't somebody saying, "Well, you should deserve this because we have to balance the ethic, the ethnicity of the team or whatever." You got a thing, and it's right there, and you got to make it happen. And it also promotes the concept of teamwork. As I said, I'm in the Hall of Fame for football at Fordham. Oh, I just got put into the Rugby Hall of Fame of the New York Athletic Club. So
Yeah,
that was a nice,
racking it up.
yeah, yippee. Well, you know what happened to me after football? I realized the only athletic acumen I had was running into people, and they don't appreciate that in golf and tennis. And so, and that was a gas. I played till I was 54, and then the neck went, and I knew how to get out. But that's the great thing about athletics is it's really life. You either won or you lost. No one's
Yes, please.
pampering it or papering it. You either won or you lost. You got to do this with other people involved. Okay, you either let them down or you lead them, and you learn the lessons of life. You can't. I mean, there's all of this pampering that's going on, trying to tell people, look, failure is critical. Failure is critical because that's where you learn in terms of what what you have to do, and if you don't have that, it's not there. So that's where athletics is really great because it's the real thing. You make it on merit. It isn't something because you know someone or a friend or you're a certain ethnic thing and some mastermind thinks that they have to master. You're either good, the best, or you're not. And I think Lombardi said, "Oh, by the way, Vince Lombardi is in the Fordham Football Hall of Fame too."
Yeah, yeah.
Me and Vince. But
Amongst, yeah, exactly. Amongst the greats. You're in there amongst the greats. Yeah, absolutely.
that's where congratulations on that job because
Thank you.
I think athletics helps to cure all societal issues because you learn those lessons and irreplaceable, irreplaceable.
I agree, and too many kids now drop out too soon, and a lot of times around middle school, right? And so also it teaches that accountability. There's a certain amount of hope that gets in there. Certainly, it teaches faith, right? All those things, and again, with so many broken households, with so much just disruption, I don't know, so much social media being bombarded. I find that athletics is one of those still pure places to hit the field or the court or whatever, where you can actually it's just, it's you and you and you and the team and, you and the creator. And that is something that I think we've gotten too far away from. It's
Yeah,
it's tough. We need to keep advocating that, Joe. We need you out there talking about that too, especially, of course I'm going to say especially for young men. It makes all the difference.
yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'll kind of wrap up and ask you, kind of just wrapping back up to your mom. Um, what's the best advice do you think, or what do you think's the top lesson that your mom gave to you or taught you, and maybe not, she didn't say it, but something that you learned from her?
Well, first of all, I think what it supports is the fact that children belong to families, not to the government. And believe me, that's beginning to creep in here. And the government has
Yeah.
no
Facts.
has no thing in terms of taking children or changing their sex orientation or what have you. And that's really a very dangerous thing. Destroy the family, and you got a real problem on you.
Did you
So
just hear this? There's a woman, the article just came out this week that this woman who's one of the influencers on Instagram, she put into, I want to say, ChatGPT, how can we destroy, what would Satan do to destroy the family? Or what would Satan do if he wanted to destroy the world? And it went through and gave her the list, and it was like destroy the family, separate children from parents, like boom, 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 playbook.
it's like Nazi Germany. They just wanted they had to leave. I forget the name of the thing, but they promoted the idea of the SS having a lot of children, and they put the kids in, and it never the parent. A lot of the infants just died. So the
Hmm.
family unit is the foundational piece. And the other thing was my mother had a tough thing, and she just did it. So I remember her saying, when you have children, that's your job. So she never openly complained about it or what have you. And, she got through it, and so that's the shock of that situation didn't materialize on me until I was 54 years of age and had to speak at this MDRT thing, and then that's what I realized. What I did was, I mean, thank God, God put me in this thing. I didn't join the insurance business because of what my mother went through. That the guy from the New York Giants said,
Hmm.
join
Told
me.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody you
So
respected. Yeah.
so I did it. So I think um, that's the thing that I learned. The family unit is the most important part, and anything that goes against that or tries to undermine that is is evil. And I also think that religion is also important. I mean, this is what's happened to our society. We have a secular society, more secular than it was before. You have family values and religion have all declined, and so these are all of the things that are undermining, from the bottom up. And I think that has to be looked at and changed. And I also like the idea of athletics and sports for people to really learn the lessons early on, um, and that nothing should be given to you. It's just like everybody gets a trophy, and
Hmm.
effort, I tried that.
Hmm.
That be hard, and it's just not a good tack.
And so I guess lastly, what advice would you give to all the mothers out there on their finances, et cetera, on what they're doing, understanding that we're going to be the ones around for probably 20 years with each other?
Well, I would say this just to give some financial advice. Most people take Social Security at age 62, which is just stupid. Okay, I'm going to call it stupid
Yeah.
because it's 76% more if you wait till age 70. And so that's one of the things, because you're going to have to soften what's going to happen in the future as you have inflation, and even very mild inflation erodes the purchasing power and the lifestyle that you have. So I think a fundamental thing is that most people adopted the idea of taking Social Security at age 70. It's not an entitlement. It's not there. It's
Hmm.
substantially less, and prices are just going to continue to go up, and that actually helps the organization. I think right now it's age 62 that you can take Social Security, and that was dumb. It started at 65. Who started 65 for retirement? Otto von Bismarck. And you know why he chose
Really?
65?
No.
Nobody lived that long. So
No.
tomorrow I get my pension, and then you die. So that's what it was. So this is all designs that go back to the 30s when life expectancy was dramatically different. This is not the evil government,
We
coming
haven't updated it since then. It's so outdated, right? It's just completely outdated.
so outdated. And so what that is, the idea, how can the government pay people 76% more age 70? Okay. Well, it's not a phony investment or what have you. It just happens to be mortality rights. Um, the fact of the matter is that it's upside down life insurance. Life insurance okay, is funded by the people who live pay for the people who die, and annuities are people who die pay who die pay for the people who live, and they provide a lifetime guaranteed income that you can't outlive. That's what Social Security does. So the whole idea fundamentally, so without layering 60 things on people, I would say everyone's got to begin to rethink that the odds are you're going to, now, if you have a serious injury or a serious
Hmm.
health issue, you might want to take it earlier. But for the most part, people should be taking Social Security a lot later because it's substantially more, and it's operating not on investing in Bulgarian bonds or something. Not to knock Bulgaria, I don't know what their bond placement is, but you know, it's just it's human measurement, you know, that's there. So I would say that's if we could get to that. The other thing that has to happen is I think we're going to have to expand. I forget the limit that it goes. I think it's like $140,000. You know, expand it out. You know, that has to happen. Elongate. You know, say you can get Social Security now at age 67. You know, because it makes it work and it happens. So you know, I would say, you know, that's some of the stuff that's a fundamental easy thing for people to understand and to act on.
Okay, great. Well, Joe, I can't thank you enough for spending time with us and for giving us such good advice. And again, we will post the links to all your books and your upcoming speeches. And congratulations on all your accolades. Keep being out there as a great advocate for women and also for athletics. So, all the things that are super important to me. And again, I can't thank you enough. God bless you and take care.
Take care.